Actually, if it wasn't for the global pandemic now, we would be meeting at the banks of the Dead Sea in Jordan, where 6 years ago we held the first stakeholder-wide IFNEC SMR workshop. This is the 4th webinar of the series dedicated to SMR technologies that are currently being considered for deployment in the near to medium term. We welcome our panelists who will be giving us an overview of their respective technologies. The main goal is to reach a better understanding as to what these vendors are doing to bring their technology to market. We thank IFNEC and its secretariat at NEA for hosting this series of webinars focused on SMR. I would like to welcome IFNEC Steering Committee Chair, Susie Jarosky, to say a few words. Susie?
Thank you, Dr. Araj. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us all around the world. As you may know, the mission of IFNEC is to further cooperation among our global partners around the world on issues that further the peaceful uses of nuclear technology. I invite you to get active in IFNEC. If you're a government representative, please join us as a representative of your government. If you're an industry representative, please see all the activities we have, such as these webinars, and also coming up next Tuesday is the last in our series on SMRs for SMR month in June, and that is Energy Synergy, how nuclear and renewables can work together in a clean system. That's 1 week from right now on Tuesday. July 8th, there'll be another webinar on multinational repositories, another very interesting topic. And I hope you'll put on your calendar when we hope to be able to see each other in person in Kenya, the week of November 9 through 11. So thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to the participants. I hope you'll enjoy this very informative webinar. And Dr. Araj, please take it away.
Thank you, Susie, for your remarks. Well, SMRs are particularly attractive for many newcomer countries for several reasons. Firstly, the enhanced safety features. Most of the designs are either inherently safe or completely passive, with some even claiming to be meltdown proof. Secondly, the enhanced security features that are added to the design from initial conception that has the potential for reduced staffing while maintaining effective security. An example of this are the SMR design that are located underground with controlled access to vital areas, which greatly simplifies protection of the facility from any intrusion. As for grid stability, SMR are more suited in output and flexibility for small grid countries like Jordan. SMR in general are more versatile and provide more opportunities for distributed siting to meet local demand for electricity, heat, and desalination without significant investment for off-site infrastructure. Load following allows for a wider range of applications, especially synergy with intermittent renewable. Capital cost for SMR is another advantage. The cost of deploying SMR is more manageable than large power plants, as the initial commitment is much lower, which is one of the main challenges the industry is facing with large reactors. Modern designs are simpler than older designs and lend themselves to serial production in factory, thus offering learning curve savings like that for other manufactured goods. Moreover, they can be built faster, reducing additional financing costs because of the shorter time between expenditure for construction and production of power. The economics of SMR exploit the benefit of incremental investments and the economics of serial production of identical units, economies of multiples, to achieve competitive costing and pricing in the market. This is, of course, requires harmonization of utility regulatory requirements and design standardization on a global market scale. Today with us, we have a number of the technologies that will be operational in the short to medium term, and some is operational. They will be present to us their technologies and address issues such as the state of design development and regulatory review, features that affect key deployment areas such as deployment schedule to the market, financing options they bring to customers, especially in newcomer countries, and the targets to achieving this big buzz of economy of multiples that should make SMRs competitive to current conventional generation sources? Or are there other issues that should be resolved, like licensing process and regulations, for example, to achieve this? Following this presentation, we'll have a panel session and a question and answer. So please use the question and answer icon on your Zoom not the chat, to actually place your questions. All the presentations will be available online after the webinar. They will be uploaded. So you will see, we'll have more details. So, but I just want to, before we start with the panelists, I want to remind every panelist that you have 10 minutes actually, because we are quite a large number of panelists. We actually have 9 SMR technologists here in this webinar, so we have to be very careful about time. So without any further ado, we will start with GE presentation. Our first presentation will be made by Dr. John Ball. Dr. Ball is the Executive Vice President of Nuclear Products for GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy, headquartered in Wilmington, North Carolina. In his role, John has a responsibility for a portfolio of small modular reactors, advanced reactors, nuclear fuel, instrumentation and control, digital solution, and a broad range of engineering solutions and products. Dr. Ball has been in the nuclear industry for 27 years. He has a PhD in chemistry from Penn State University. His presentation, as you see, will be on the BWRX. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Professor Raj. And it's great to be with everyone from my home here in Wilmington, North Carolina. So if you go to the next page, GE has been in the nuclear industry really from the onset. And we've been developing new nuclear technology for decades. For example, in the mid-'80s, we deployed our 50th boiling water reactor. And although we've focused largely, as much of the industry, on large light water reactors, we truly believe that the future of nuclear is in small modular reactors, or SMRs, and that's been our primary focus as of late. Next page, please. So I think we can all, many of us on this call can agree that new nuclear is going to be absolutely essential to achieving a world that values decarbonization. More than 60 countries to date have established net zero targets by the year 2050. But the reality is that in order for nuclear to be relevant going forward, it's an absolute imperative that it become cost competitive. There's been a number of reports recently. Catapult Energy Systems just last week out of the UK published a report where they stated that cost reduction is a necessary prerequisite for the future of nuclear. EPRI and MIT have published detailed reports on the same topic. Go to the next page, please. So it's really out of that spirit of driving cost competitive nuclear that our SMR was born, the BWRX 300. And we've established a very rigorous design to cost approach, setting aggressive targets to be competitive with all forms of generation, including gas, and really driving for a significant capital cost reduction. Now, the X300 is our 10th generation boiling water reactor. That's what the X stands for. We've scaled it from our ES-BWR design, which is licensed by the US NRC, still maintaining world-class safety. The benefits of smaller reactors like the X300 are their flexibility, the ability to load follow. We've done modeling and has the capability to do that. Besides providing electricity generation, ideal for other industrial applications like desalination, district heating, we've had a lot of focus on constructability. This is key in terms of reducing the overall cost of new nuclear. And we've established, and I'll talk more about, licensing in both the US and Canada, and have a path towards being operational by the year 2027. Next page, please. So our reactor, the X300, I mentioned it's scaled from the ES-BWR, which you see on this page. And much like other large light water reactors, there are many backup cooling systems associated with these reactor designs in the event of a large break, loss of coolant accident, or LOCA. And so what you see in the ES-BWR are a lot of these cooling systems shaded in blue in the event you have a LOCA. Well, it turns out in our decades of operating boiling water reactors, we've never had a large break LOCA. So we have these massive safety systems in the event you have an accident that we've never experienced. And so our engineers figured out a way to eliminate or mitigate the possibility of a large break LOCA. And so what you see is the ability to eliminate all of those systems and the massive structure that goes with them. And so we've been able to reduce the volume of this reactor by 90%, but while still maintaining 20% of the output. So we get tremendous leverage, more than 50% reduction in building volume, in concrete and steel on a per megawatt basis. And we're in the process of licensing this concept. We've submitted an LTR to the NRC. It's going through review, and we anticipate that it will be approved in the July timeframe, just next month. Next page, please. So we have these new innovations that have enabled us to simplify the reactor. Simplification is key because you lose those economies of scale. You've got to figure out how to simplify. But we've also coupled this design with proven technology. So you think about the major components in this boiling water reactor, like the dryer, the steam separator. These are all exactly the same designs that are operating in the existing fleet, namely the advanced boiling water reactor for more than 20 years, just scaled down versions of exactly the same component. In addition, this design leverages existing fuel. It's been optimized, in fact, on GNF2 fuel, which is operating in 70% of the boiling water reactor fleet today. So this enables us to bring this technology to market very rapidly. Our experience is it can take up to a decade to design, license, and deploy new fuel designs. Next page, please. So we have line of sight for this design to be very cost competitive from an nth-of-a-kind perspective. And so you can see this is just a plot of the levelized cost of electricity versus the overnight capital cost for a new reactor. Conventional large light water reactor is very expensive. And you can see where the X300 is positioned, $1 billion or less, and somewhere in the 40s dollars on a per megawatt basis, or megawatt hour basis, that is. Next page, please. We have initiated licensing, as I mentioned, both in Canada and the US. And in Canada, we've just started the vendor design review, which is a combined phase 1 and 2 approach. In the US, we've started and we plan on a Part 50 approach, leveraging the ES-BWR design. I mentioned this is already licensed by the NRC. And so what we need to do is simply submit licensed topical reports that describe the key differences from ES-BWR going to the X300. We've started that process. We have a handful of these LTRs. So another example of the ability to really accelerate this technology to market by leveraging ES-BWR. And we target commercial operation by 2027 in the US and 2028 in Canada. Next page, please. So we believe that the US and Canada are going to be first movers, but the rest of the world, and these are just a few examples, and we've been in discussions with a number of other companies and countries that are interested in this technology. We have an MOU with the CEZ Group out of Czech Republic, Synthos out of Poland. This represents a very interesting new customer base. In the future, Synthos is a large chemical manufacturer. So we believe that the customers in the future for SMRs are not going to be just utilities, but also the industrials. And Synthos represents a great example of that. And then Fermi Energia out of Estonia. And so all of these countries being part of the EU, getting to net zero by 2050 is really an imperative for that region. And then we've recently won some ARPA-E awards, or the X300 was selected as the reference design for these awards, leveraging both artificial intelligence and digital twins to further reduce the operating cost. And you can see the team of partners that we're working on in this work. Now, this is not required to bring this technology to market, but just an additional enhancement as we help the industry leverage digital technologies like artificial intelligence to reduce operating costs even further. Next page, please. So the X300 ready for near-term deployment. I mentioned the US. We're very enthusiastic about the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program. We have established a very strong team of industry partners, utility partners. This is a very affordable and simple design. I mentioned it's licensable, really just establishing these LTRs, these key differences from the ES-BWR to X300, certified and proven fuel design. And then we as a company have had a track record of deploying reactor technology for decades on time and on budget, and the ability to establish supply chains. Wherever we go around the world, we understand that localized supply chains are critical. And we've done that not only in nuclear, but across the entire GE portfolio. And then the ability to service these reactors once they are online. And this is really key in terms of continuing to reduce the operating cost by optimizing outages and those aftermarket areas of support that are so critical. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and very optimistic about the future of SMRs. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for a very interesting presentation. Next, we have Professor Li Fu. Professor Fu Li is the Deputy Chief Engineer of the Institute of Nuclear and New Energy Technologies at Tsinghua University. As the Deputy Chief Engineer of INET, the main developer and designer for HTR-PM, Professor Liu is heavily involved in the HTR-PM project, which is under the final stage of construction. He was in charge of reactor physics and safety design for HTR-PM, also participated in the design of HTR demonstration plant. He's also the Chinese representative to the Generation 4 International Forum for High Temperature Reactor System Steering Committee, and has first-hand information on the progress of HTR in China and worldwide. He will be talking about HTR-PM program. So, Professor Liu.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's my pleasure to introduce the progress of HTR in China. Thanks. Next. Okay, I will introduce the overview mission of HTR in China and the overview progress of HTR program in China and the real HTR-PM progress that is built in China now. And also after the HTR-PM, we want to build a larger one. Thanks. Next. So in China, we think HTR is very important. It will be a supplement for the electric generation to PWR. And its main role is the cogeneration to produce the high temperature steam and maybe in the future for the hydrogen production. And also as an innovative technology, and the government will support the commercial development of the project. Okay, next. And you'll see that in China, we started the research on the HTR in 1970s. And in 1980s, we started the test reactor HTR-10, and it finished in 2000. After that, we think we must build the commercial plant. It's the HTR-PM. The HTR-PM is started the construction in 2012, and we hope the next year it will be great quality. And after that, we want to build a larger one, but the reactor itself is the same, but we each unit, there are more module of the module. A module of the reactor is our aim and our plan. And we choose pebble bed, of course, maybe you all know, and I think our project also benefits from the international cooperation. Next. Next. Okay. For the HTR-PM, now it's under construction in Shandong province. And you see this is in Beijing, and it's around 1,000 kilometers from Beijing. It's in Shandong province, and it's the site. Next. And this site you can see is the overview of the plant. In the middle, it's the reactor building and located side by the turbine building. And of course, this site is very big, and additional large light water reactor power plant also were built in the same site. Okay, next. Okay, what it looks like, the HTR-PM. For HTR-PM, there are reactor and a steam generator is side-by-side layout. And this layout is very similar to the left side HTR-10. Just the size increased and the power is increased, and all the components or the technology also is also very similar. And the HTR-10 is the first modular test reactor, and HTR-PM will be the first commercial modular reactor. Okay, next. And the special design features of HTR-PM is we have 2 reactor, 2 steam generator, and the steam will come to 1 turbine. And for this configuration, in the future, we want to collect 1 steam turbine with 6 reactor module and 6 steam generator. In this way, we can keep the main component and steam, but we can produce a large plant with much more better economical features. This is our idea. Therefore, we will test the coupling between 2 modules in 1 unit in HTR-PM. This will be our idea. Okay, next. For this HTR-PM, we have 2 reactors, each can produce the thermal power 250, and the turbine will produce 200 megawatt, and the efficiency is around 42%. And the steam temperature is around 570 degrees. Therefore, we can use commercial steam turbine with very high efficiency. And the temperature of the helium is around 750. It's enough for the supercritical steam also. And if in the future we want to produce the hydrogen, we can increase the temperature, of course. Next. Next. Okay, for the project, you can see we start the construction in 2012, in the end of 2012. And this year, all the installation is nearly finished. And the reactor pressure vessel, the collect duct vessel, and steam generator vessel is fixed together. And of course, you can see it lasts about 6 and 8 years of installation and construction. And it's the first kind of project, many technical issue we encountered. And I think in the next project, the construction period is arranged about 40 months, not longer as this demonstration plant. Next. And in this year, the commissioning test is started, and the criticality and power operation is scheduled in next year. Okay. Okay, I think from the project report, I think the main achievement from our project is we test the standard nuclear steam supply system modules, and its full-scale test, and will be demonstrated in later operation. And also, our team get the experience from the design, manufacture, license, construction, installation, and commission test and operation. And also, it's very important to say that the license framework for this new type of reactor will get the full experience. And the license authority in China also familiar this project. And also, up to now, no technical issue is left, just only to provide the experiment dirt for all the components also is important. And also, we build many test facility. This is very important for the future development of the system and the components. And we set up the whole supply chain for all the components. And also, the fuel fabrication for the HTR is paid for the paper bed is very special, and we have a commercial plant for the fuel. It's also important for the future deployment of the HTR.
You have 2 minutes to wrap up, yes? Professor Liu.
Yeah?
You have 2 minutes, yes?
Okay, next. And also, you can see we have many test facility for all the components, all the systems. It's very important for the future if we improve the component system. Okay, next. All the components were tested. And also for the supply chain, we have very big utility company, and they are willing to be next utility company, and all the main components mostly is coming from China, from the Shanghai Electric, for example, and also for the graphite is come from Japan company, Toyotanso. And also for the fuel, for the components, for the instrumentation and control, all is coming from China. I think all the system, all the design, all the manufacture, all the construction, the supply chain is available in China and some from the worldwide. Okay, next. And after the HTR-PM, I think we can batch construction of HTR-PM is available. And also we designed a new version of HTR-PM 600. There are 6 modules instead of 2 modules in demonstration plant. But all the components are the same, but just larger size and better economical. And we hope in this way it can be competed with other type of the nuclear power plant. And also it can help to produce the steam. It's very important for the market. Next. And for the HTR-PM, actually it's combined 3 reactor building of the HTR-PM, but it's become to a runway, and therefore the space for the building and the components, all the costs can be reduced. You can see what it looks like. Next, you can see the whole picture. Okay, next.
Let's try to wrap up, please.
Yeah, this is the reactor building hosting 6 reactor, 6 steam generator located side by a steam turbine. And this is the same space and same area of the light water reactor actually. Okay, next. And I think I can skip this slide. It's a pyramid, and I can conclusion. Okay, next. Okay. All the pyramid is same as that. I think for the HTR project, we can provide a proven technology and the budget of project. And also the safety feature can meet the generation 4 category. And also we can provide 200 or 600 electricity, very flexible. and also the steam with the temperature around 600 also is available, and also with the whole supply chain. And therefore, this is a rare project. All the technology, all the experience is available. Okay, next.
Thank you, Professor Lee.
Therefore, I think it's a big market chance, and also the international cooperation on this field is appreciated. Welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor Lee, for a very comprehensive presentation. I'm surely all the people will be able to read your slides carefully. But we need to move now. We move actually now to terrestrial energy. We have with us Mr. Simon Irish. Mr. Irish is the Chief Executive Officer of Terrestrial Energy. He has 20 years of global investment banking and investment management experience in New York and London, and he has a formal education in quantitative sciences and finance. So we'll have a different approach here. Mr. Irish holds an MEA in Natural Sciences from Cambridge University and MSc in Finance from the London Business School. He will be speaking about the IMSR power plant, the resilient and cost-competitive clean energy alternative. Please, Mr. Irish.
Raj, thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank IFNEC, Suzy Jarowski, and Professor Raj for the opportunity to participate in this panel session today. Terrestrial Energy is developing a Generation 4 power plant. And a fundamental question for any private enterprise is, why are we doing this? That's probably the first question to ask any private enterprise. What is the purpose of your enterprise? In our case, we believe that there's a tremendous opportunity today to solve the principal problem that limits future nuclear deployment in global energy markets, and that is the problem of cost. Nuclear today is unaffordable and lacks cost competitiveness, particularly against Generation 3 systems, particularly against alternatives such as natural gas and wind and solar. If you can solve that problem, you have a tremendous commercial opportunity. We think we can solve that problem, and we think we can solve it with using a demonstrated molten salt technology, and that technology is the heart of a pragmatic and market-focused design. Our design is called the Integral Molten Salt Reactor. It's rated for each unit at 195 megawatt electrical, so it's a small reactor, small modular reactor. And one illustration of the pragmatic market-focused approach is we're a Generation 4 system that's using standard assay low-enriched uranium, under 5% low-enriched uranium, and that points to the near-term deployability of our system. That's a very important point. We believe we're on a clear path to market, to that near-term deployment. We anticipate with our supply chain and utility partners, we'll have first commercial plant operating within 10 years. As part of that program, you must engage early with the utility, with a nuclear regulator. In our case, we engaged early with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. We started their vendor design review process, and were probably one of the first to do so in early 2016. We completed phase 1 in late 2017, which demonstrated we had a full understanding of Canadian nuclear codes and standards for nuclear deployment. We commenced the phase 2 in 2018, and we expect to be completing phase 2 in the next 12 or 18 months. In conjunction with that, we have started a pre-application program with the NRC, and part of those activities are associated with our participation in a memorandum of cooperation between the two agencies that was established in summer last year, and that cooperation involved joint reviews of advanced reactor technologies, and we're pleased to be participating with both agencies in that memorandum of cooperation. So to sum up, we believe that IMSR technology is deployable in the near term as a Generation 4 system, and because that deployment is based on a cost competitive position of our design, we think it has capacity to transform global energy markets. So next slide, please. I just want to return to the problem statement, the innovation statement. The first 3 bullet points are self-evident truths that those in the nuclear industry recognize. Nuclear energy as an energy source is capable, has always been capable of changing the world, and it will change the world. It's more scalable than fossil fuels, and it's clean. Conventional nuclear, though, suffers from what I call the problem of tens. And this limits its deployment because it limits its ability to engage with capital. It's over $1 billion, $10 billion per unit. It takes over 10 years to construct, which may just about work for governments when interest rates are at 5,000-year lows, but it will not work when interest rates normalize. You have to construct a nuclear power plant or any infrastructure project quickly. So over 10 years to construct, and once you've built it, you can dispatch power at over 10 cents a kilowatt hour. That may be okay for governments doing things not entirely for economic reasons, but that's not acceptable for private capital. And the problem of tens is associated with high complexity. So conventional nuclear new build is too big, too complex, and too costly to build. And these, in our opinion, are direct and unavoidable consequences of technology choices. As a company, we formed the company in 2013 because we believe there's a need to rethink technologies and rethink designs. Next slide, please. The integral molten salt reactor, I'm sorry, that's you may have jumped 2 slides. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, that's correct. These are the cost drivers for generation 3 small modular reactors, in our opinion. You start off with the cost position of a large conventional reactor. You want to make it smaller. You're going the wrong way down an economy of scale, which is ferocious in the nuclear sector, because at every turn, economically, you have fixed costs. And those fixed costs point you always consistently to have bigger and bigger systems or deploy more and more of them. That is a negative factor, and it's unavoidable if you wish to have an affordable power plant. You can, to some extent, in our opinion, offset that by making it modular and assuming you have a broad market deployment. But in our opinion, modularity and the mass construction of components in a factory setting is only going to partially offset the diseconomies that have been accrued from making it small. So we don't believe that a small modular reactor using conventional reactor technologies solves the market problem. Next slide, please, slide 5. We have chosen in our rethink to use a lab technology that was demonstrated successfully and further researched over multiple programs extending over 60 years in National Lab. We've chosen to use that technology. It's a generation 4 technology, and we've packaged that in a market-focused and pragmatic design. And it's the integration of private sector enterprise, which is focused on practical commercial solutions, to timely product development in response to market needs, and a extensive national lab development program. So the advantages are that our system has high inherent and passive safety, a clear regulatory pathway to first deployment, no fundamental technical barriers, and the replaceable core, which is part of our innovation, addresses material lifetime requirements. They're often cited as impediments to near-term deployment of molten salt reactors. The commercial advantage is cost. It's small, so affordable, a simple design. So yes, we recognize that modularity is important in overall economics. And the final point is our system operates hot. Our product is 600 degrees C from the reactor building, from the reactor. And with 600 degrees C, you can supply, for the first time, an alternative to fossil fuel heat to industry. And has a tremendous potential in achieving 2050 goals for deep decarbonization, total decarbonization of the global primary energy system. Next slide, please. So these are the cost drivers with using a demonstrated molten salt reactor in a pragmatic market-focused design. And you'll notice they're more extensive with the generation 4 technology. And the first one I'll talk about in some detail, and that is high temperature. That is the most powerful. The benefit of operating at high temperature is you have a machine that operates at 50%
Two
greater.
minutes, Mr. Simon.
Okay, a machine that operates at 50% greater thermal efficiency. With 50% greater thermal efficiency, you have 50% greater capital efficiency, and that points very clearly to the opportunity to solve the problem statement. With a thermally stable molten salt, you operate at low pressure, and with a liquid fuel, you can incorporate the greatest possible extent the great virtues of inherent and passive safety. Next slide, please. So this is where we sit in our economic environment. We believe that our technology is capable of dispatching at $50 a megawatt hour, which is competitive against alternatives. Perhaps not natural gas at the moment in North America, but certainly competitive against natural gas on a global basis. Next slide, please. If you are able to deliver on price, the market opportunity is tremendous. The deployment opportunity is first. The immediate deployment opportunity, which is replacing an aging fleet in the West. A further deployment opportunity, which is immense, is replacing coal and natural gas globally. But let's not, as an industry, forget the big picture. And in doing so, lack ambition. Wind and solar and biofuels are currently attracting $300 billion a year in infrastructure capital. To put that into context, I think the largest order book is Rosatom's, and that's between now and 2040, that's about $300 billion. The total installed generation capacity, wind and solar and biofuels, is 2,500 gigawatts, half of which was deployed in the last 10 years. Price drives deployment, and if you can engage with private infrastructure capital based on price, there is an opportunity for nuclear which is larger than the opportunity experienced by wind, solar and biofuels over the last 10 years. Last slide, please. And this is our path to market. I'm sorry, penultimate slide. That was a, yes. This is our path to market. The path to market is to deployment of first system operating commercial plant by the end of 2028. And we are in the process of doing that with a mature engagement with the Canadian regulator, with our supply chain partners and with our utility partners. That is our path to market. And I think in the interest of time, Professor Araj, I should end it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Simon, for a very stimulating presentation. Next, we will actually move to Mr. Roy Sullivan, the CEO of Multics Energy, North America. Mr. Sullivan obtained the first-class honors in mechanical and manufacturing engineering from Trinity College, Dublin, having studied mechanical design engineering at Lyon de France. Before Multics, he was an award-winning project manager at the PO Group, running 50 million sterling projects. Roy co-founded Energy Process Development to develop advanced nuclear, where he led the government-funded feasibility study on the development of a prototype molten salt reactor. Rory has sat on the MSR Advisory Committee to the International Atomic Energy Agency and was a Forbes Under 30 standout. His presentation will be on Multics, an overview and update. Mr. Rory, please.
Thank you very much, Araj. I see the red text there is a slightly older revision, but that's okay. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what we're proposing to do, what we're doing at the moment, and a little bit of a technology overview in the brief few minutes we have. So next slide, please. So to start off on the technical side, why we're different, we have three unique benefits. And the first is the most important one. It's our invention of stable salt fuel allows an increase in safety compared with conventional nuclear with a significant simplification. And this is what allows the cost reduction. If you look at the image on the left, you have a conventional fuel pin that we all know, solid fuel pellets in pins. In the solid pellets, you have a mix of solid uranium in the form of uranium oxide typically, and high pressure gas. On the right, we have our fuel pins, which are very similar pins, but we have liquid fuel salt inside the molten salt. When you have a liquid fuel salt, we don't have the gas and fuel. it's all in a liquid form. So essentially, if something goes wrong, the temperature of the plant goes up, but we don't have a scenario where we have a large release of radioactive gas to beyond the site boundary that could harm humans. And so that massive increase in safety allows our plant to be much simpler. The fuel itself is a chloride fuel, and it's mixed with heavy metals, the uranium and fuel. And this leads on to the second unique point, are the ability to reduce waste or spent nuclear fuel. I'll touch on that in a minute. And then third, it's our ability to enable further renewables by using nuclear as a peaking plant rather than just baseload. So this concept of molten salt in fuel pins is a granted patent in all major nations. And we have independent validation from major sources. Next slide, please. So coming back to one of the three unique points, the ability to complement renewables. So on the image here, you can see on the left, we're looking at the moment, we're looking at a 300 megawatt reactor. We have designed that produces base load heat all the time, 24/7. But we couple that with energy storage from the solar industry, concentrated solar power to be precise. And these two combined allow for a peaking plant at a much higher capacity. So for example, if we have a 300 megawatt reactor, like we're talking about building in eastern Canada, we can couple that with energy storage for 8 hours, so we can run a 900 megawatt power plant for 8 hours a day. You could have any amount of storage or capacity you want, but the ability to work with renewables really changes what nuclear can do for a more flexible grid in the future. The cost when you do this for a larger plant can come down as low as $1,000 a kilowatt comparative to gas and capital cost. But when you compare the storage cost alone, if you look at a comparison to Tesla, we're about 8 times cheaper for the storage part rather than electric storage. So storing heat is much cheaper than storing electricity. Next slide, please. So the third attribute is the ability to close the fuel cycle and recycle nuclear waste. So on the top, you have the traditional route, where in Canada, you have fresh fuel, goes to the reactor and gets stored at the existing nuclear sites. The current plan is at some point in the future, that will be shipped across Canada and go into a repository deep underground, where it'll be safely stored but radioactive for 300,000 years. And this is a similar plan that most countries have. What we're proposing is to take that fuel from the existing reactor site, put it into our designed fuel facility called waste stable salts. We can convert that into fresh fuel for our reactor, which we can turn into clean energy in our combined reactor and storage facility. The spent fuel from our facility can go back into that facility again, and the process goes round and round and round for the duration of the plant. So we still have some waste, long-lived waste at the end of the reactor life that needs to go into a repository, but the volume is significantly reduced. So the end goal is reducing that large volume of long-lived waste into a very small volume and getting clean energy from what was waste. Next slide, please. So what matters here with all this, as we heard a few times already today, is cost. And what you can see is the historical capital cost of nuclear over time. These blue bars, if you look on the left, in the 1970s, nuclear was cheap. This is when we had the large rollout of nuclear across the globe. Through the 80s, as we realized that the safety performance of these facilities was just not enough, there was increased engineered safety systems added, bolted on, left, right, top, bottom, until now you have some of the most expensive buildings ever built on Earth are the new nuclear plants, and it's just not affordable electricity for the future. And the costs the estimates we're coming out at for the larger facilities are shown now in the right in green. Next slide, please. The impact of this is substantial. This is a study done by EPRI in the US based on the penetration of nuclear in the US in 2050 at different price points. If you look at the bars here, the one on the left is nuclear at $5,000 per kilowatt. The light gray in the middle is new build nuclear in 2050. Essentially, at that price, it's irrelevant. Dark gray is conventional nuclear. At $4,000 a kilowatt, capital cost is the second bar, new nuclear is still irrelevant. At $3,000, you can see the light gray gets a little bigger and it starts to become part of the energy mix. If you can get to $2,000, new build nuclear is the dominant energy source in the United States in 2050, and that is effectively around 500 gigawatts of new build nuclear. And the US doesn't even need new capacity, they're replacing old capacity. So if you replicate this across the world, where we need to double the capacity of energy by that time frame, approximately, the opportunity for nuclear, if you can get the economics right, is unfathomably big. Next slide, please. So what we're doing now to demonstrate this technology is we have a customer and partner with the New Brunswick Power Utility and the province of New Brunswick and the east coast of Canada. You can see a little map there where our proposed site location is. They're a government-owned utility, the government of New Brunswick. We are progressing through the Canadian regulatory process, the vendor design review, coming to a close of phase 1. To get confidence on the design, we're doing a research and development on our fuel with the University of New Brunswick and Canadian Nuclear Labs to demonstrate that conversion of spent CANDU fuel to our fresh fuel. And we have funding from Canadian Nuclear Labs to support that. We've got an office in New Brunswick with a growing team here. And we've just opened an office in Manchester, UK. We're expanding the UK team there. We're doing parallel research on the fuel with the University of Manchester. We have extensive work across the US labs with funding from the DOE through ARPA-E on a couple of different projects. And at the moment, we're progressing dialogue with the Canadian federal government to get support for the next phase. Next slide, please. So on the technology itself, I mentioned it's a 300 megawatt reactor. It's the first one we're looking at building in New Brunswick. And the fuel assemblies itself are quite like a sodium fast reactor. In fact, in section, the reactor looks quite like a sodium fast reactor. It is fast spectrum. The coolant, however, is a fluoride coolant. It's a mixture of zirconium and potassium fluorides. And the fuel is a mixture of potassium fluoride and other actinide trichlorides. We're looking at quite a high burn up, around 100 and 150 gigawatt days per ton, and that's because of the advantages of molten salts. Next slide, please. So in terms of operations of the plant, essentially, this is not a revolution in terms of staffing requirements. The principles of our staffing are actually quite similar to conventional plants, because we have fuel facilities on the same site. So we'll be looking at siting these adjacent to existing light water reactors to use the spent fuel from those facilities. So we have reduced staffing, but the same types of staffing. Typically, there'll be extensive IEA involvement because we will be dealing with spent fuel, but there will be efficiencies because you'll be working beside, typically working adjacent to an existing facility. Next slide, please. So overall, we expect our reactor technology to cost significantly less than existing nuclear options. We can reduce the legacy waste that will open up the social license to nuclear in new builds. And that's why we've taken this decision first to go with a harder reactor configuration of using spent fuel, because if you can deal with spent fuel and get the cost right for nuclear, nuclear becomes an option again. And of course, renewables will grow, so we need to be able to mix with that. We're working in both New Brunswick and the UK and the US, developing teams in all 3 countries. And we believe that new nuclear can play a significant role in economic recovery post-COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Over to you,
Mr. Rory, for a very timely and interesting presentation. Exactly on time. Now we move to NuScale. We have with us Mr. Tom Mundy, the Chief Commercial Officer of NuScale Power. In his role at NuScale, Mr. Mundy oversees commercial global business activities, including all marketing, communication, business development, and sales and services for the US and abroad. With 80 years of experience in the power generation industry, served as a founding CEO and president of Excellent Nuclear Partners. He holds a bachelor's degree in marine engineering from the US Merchant Marine Academy, a master of engineering administration from George Washington University, and a Juris Doctor from Temple University, School of Law. Very interesting background. So the floor is yours to talk about NuScale Power SMR overview and update. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Raj, and thank you, IFNEC, for the opportunity to participate in today's virtual program. let me just start by acknowledging the support that we received by the Department of Energy. We're the proud recipient of a competitively bid financial assistance awards from the department, and I want to acknowledge their support, but also note that the views expressed by me today are my own and not that of the department. So moving on, slide 3. So NuScale's mission is to provide scalable advanced nuclear technology for the production of electricity, heat, and clean water to improve the quality of life around the world. And we do that by providing a smarter, cleaner, safer, and cost-competitive energy source. So we're much, much more than just providing reliable baseload electricity. The technology offers features and capability not found in other technologies, makes it much more attractive to solve an important problem around the world, and that's energy poverty. Slide 4, please. So very briefly, and who NuScale is, I'll start from the beginning. Spent a lot of time. The initial concept was in development and testing actually in the year 2000. So we've actually started the development of the IP that forms the foundation for NuScale back in 20 years ago. And it was started with a project funded by the U.S. Department of Energy and what was called the Multi-Application Small Light Water Reactor Program, or MASLAR program. And that was conducted at Oregon State by who would later become our Chief Technology Officer, Dr. Jose Reyes. Subsequently, Dr. Reyes formed NuScale in 2007 with the sole purpose of designing and commercializing a small modular reactor technology, what we ultimately refer to as the NuScale power module. And I'll show that component here in a moment. But two things really didn't take off on the program really didn't take off until two things happened. First was in 2011, Fluor Corporation, a global engineering, procurement, and construction company, became the lead investor on NuScale's program. And secondly, in 2013, NuScale won a competitively bid cost-shared financial assistance award from the U.S. Department of Energy. And since that initial 5-year award, we've received over $300 million in financial assistance from the department and continue to receive continuing support from the department in the commercialization of our technology. The NuScale design is currently undergoing U.S. NRC design certification review, and we'll receive the NRC's final design approval in just a few months, in September of this year, actually, and then certification next year. And with a substantial financial investment in NuScale to date, we're well beyond the initial development phase of our program, and rather we're finalizing our design now and preparing our technology for construction and manufacture. Our first facility will be constructed in the U.S. and it's planned for full operation in 2027, and I'll discuss that in a moment. So next slide. I think this slide is very telling from the perspective of what a current large pressurized water reactor looks like in comparison to what I just mentioned, the NuScale power module. So everything you see in this picture with respect to the power module is the entirety of the nuclear steam supply system, the reactor, the steam generators, the pressurizer, all in an integral vessel, surrounded by its own high-pressure steel containment. It also includes the emergency core cooling, decay heat removal, and other equipment necessary for the production of essentially 200 megawatts thermal of superheated steam. It's roughly the size of a large BWRX steam generator, which are the blue components there on the right. So it's not much larger than that. But essentially, everything you see on the right there, the containment building, the equipment that would be in the rooms and the structure on either side of the containment, and all of the equipment, absent reactor coolant pumps, because our technology runs on natural circulation, we don't have reactor coolant pumps, is essentially all found in that fully factory fabricated NuScale power module. It comes from the facility, ready to be installed in its bay, hooked up feed and steam lines, ready to fuel load and operate. It's that simple. Takes advantage of repetitive factory fabrication and simplification of the design to reduce costs and improve the safety case. Each of those modules is connected to, as I mentioned, produces 200 megawatts thermal of heat, but it's connected to, and under normal circumstances, its own power conversion system. And this is also a skid-mounted, fully factory fabricated power conversion system, which consists of a steam turbine generator, condenser, and some ancillary equipment associated with feed condensate. But essentially, you hook each one of these modules to its own power conversion system, and it produces 60 megawatts of electricity. The technology, however, is scalable in that the facility can house anywhere from 1 to up to 12 of these modules. So if all 12 were installed and running at full power, the NuScale 12 module facility can produce up to 720 megawatts gross of electricity. Next slide. I'll give you some perspective of where the power module resides with respect to the overall facility. The modules themselves sit in their individual bay, sitting in what amounts to the ultimate heat sink. So a large pool of water that provides cooling water in the event that such cooling water is needed. The figure on the top there shows a cross section of the reactor building. It's a very simple concrete structure. It's a seismic category 1 aircraft impact resistant building. And it's showing a module in its bay and a module being delivered on its side on the upper left of the reactor building. They come from the factory. They've been sized to be able to be shipped by rail, truck, or barge, are delivered, lowered into the pool, bolted up, fueled, bolted up, and moved into its bay. The reactor building then, the arrow points to where that is situated on the power plant site. The reactor building is in the center, rad waste building to the left, and a control building, essentially where the control room is, to the right, and then 2 turbine buildings where the power conversion equipment resides, 6 power conversion systems on one building and 6 in another. I note the Triple Crown for nuclear safety. That our design, as I mentioned, the extremely strong safety case results in an indefinite, unlimited coping period in the event that the station loses all power. All the reactors are automatically shut down, and they will cool for an indefinite period of time without the need for operator action or control system action, no AC or DC power, and no need to add any more water to the pool. That's a first for the nuclear industry. And a first in that we don't need nuclear, what's called 1E electric power. Next slide. So blazing the trail to the commercialization. So we've invested almost $1 billion to date in the development of our technology, and we've been blazing the trail of commercialization in the U.S. advanced reactor market segment now for well over 10 years. And as you can see from this graphic, it's a very tall mountain to climb to do what is necessary to develop your technology, get it licensed, and ultimately see that technology commercialized and deployed. And as I mentioned, our first plant delivery is in 2027. I'll mention that more in a moment. Some of the notable upcoming milestones are the NRC's approval of our design in September, as I mentioned, the first power module forging order in 2021, and module fabrication commencing and standard plant design completing in 2022. So we'll be finishing the design of the standard plant in just a couple of years to support that first plant deployment. Next slide. The design certification has been going very well since we submitted our application in early 2017. It was docketed in just a couple of months, and a review commenced in March. We'll be finishing phase 6, which is the NRC's issuance of the final safety evaluation report, providing the NRC's design approval of our technology in just a few months. So we're wrapping that up. And then the administrative process of the certification will follow on next year. But what's important is that design approval, and that our customers need that to be able to reference an approved design in their own combined operating and construction license applications. We're also in Canada in phases 1 and 2 of the Canadian vendor design review process to have our technology before the Canadian regulator there in anticipation of deployment of our technology in what appears to be a very promising market for SMR technologies. Move on to 9, please. So always an important consideration is what the facility will cost. We may have been the first SMR technology to produce very rigorously developed bottoms-up cost estimate that comports to the AACE International regime of cost estimating. We did this first in 2014, updated in 2017. We're working with our first customer to do now to develop a Class 3 estimate for the project. Class 3 estimates require that you bring to bear project-specific information and costing, but a very rigorous review, and it shows that for the Nth-of-a-kind deployments beyond that first one, that we're looking at roughly $2.5 billion for 720 megawatts gross of electricity, or roughly $3,600 per kW, certainly a number that we think is competitive with gigawatt-sized facilities. Our target levelized cost of energy for that first project for a customer under its financially model assumptions is $65 per megawatt, also very competitive on a levelized basis. Next slide. I didn't mention that that estimate is based upon deploying our facility, our 12-module facility, a generic greenfield site in the U.S., in the southeastern U.S., using U.S. labor rates, labor productivity, and other costs associated with deploying a facility in the U.S. So if the facility were deployed elsewhere, and say, for example, a different labor pool would be used that may be more less costly than a U.S. labor pool, then the price would obviously go down for that facility. But those prices are all based on a generic location in the U.S. This slide shows our first deployment. Our customer is the Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems, a municipal power company headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, but intends to purchase our 12-module facility for deployment at the Idaho National Laboratory site of the Department of Energy. Again, that'll be a 720 megawatt facility. UMS is receiving its own financial assistance, cost shared awards from the department to help with its licensing and deployment related costs and with deployment of the facility itself. But we are, as I mentioned, are working to support that commercial operation of 2027 of that first facility.
Thank you.
Next slide.
I think we need to close.
International opportunities. While we have a lot of domestic interest in the U.S., despite the fact that gas is so cheap in the U.S., there's a lot of states that are imposing or considering imposing very stringent low carbon objectives, and that's causing power companies that had not thought about considering new nuclear now are considering that maybe SMRs are an option for them. So we have a lot of dialogue with U.S. companies. Internationally, the price of gas is not quite as inexpensive as it is in the U.S. Carbon is taxed in some markets, and therefore there is quite a bit of interest internationally as well in our technology. As I mentioned, we're in the VDR process in Canada and have MOUs signed with OPG and Bruce, and MOUs that are shown here for a number of other companies exploring the possible deployment of our technology. We also have several other MOUs that are not mentioned here and have not yet been made public, and have several in negotiation. So quite a bit of activity internationally, and not only for electricity production, but because of the features and capability of the technology. How much more time?
You're finished almost. More than.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm wrapping up here. Last slide then. So we believe NuScale is the future of energy. Our concept for smarter, cleaner, safer, and cost-competitive energy is getting closer to commercialization, as I mentioned. We've had over a decade of R&D, testing, and development. We show some of the prototypical first-of-a-kind equipment that has been manufactured on this slide to date in support of that commercialization, and we're confident that our first project in Idaho will act as a catalyst for subsequent SMR projects throughout the United States and the world. And I thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now we move to Russia. We have with us Ms. Elena Pashina, Marketing Director for Rosatom Overseas. Ms. Elena Pashina has been with Rosatom Overseas for over 7 years. As the Marketing Director, she's working to bring Rosatom Energy Solutions to the market and to ensure that Rosatom integrated offer for large-scale MPP, SMRs, floating nuclear reactors, and centers of nuclear science and technology fully meet market needs and stands at the highest level of competitiveness. Ms. Pashina is a member of the IEA Technical Working Group and the World Nuclear Association SMR Task Force on SMR. Her presentation will be Rosatom Ritim Siri SMR. Please, Ms. Elena, the floor is yours. Yes. Please unmute yourself. We don't hear you. Ms. Elena?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Now we hear you. Please, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So thank you, Dr. Araj, and I will give you an overview of Rosatom experience in SMR technology development as well as a brief overlook on our flagship SMR technology, and a quick update on the status of the first-of-a-kind SMR nuclear power plant in Russia. So in the slide that you see, I will start with a brief overview of Rosatom as a company. Here are a few facts about the company. We are one of the leading energy and technology companies on a global scale. We operate in more than 50 countries around the globe and employ over 250,000 people. We consist of more than 300 subsidiaries, and I will mention several of them being part of the SMR nuclear power plant project, obviously. We are the only company in the world to offer the integrated solutions along the whole nuclear supply chain, from uranium mining to backend, as you can see in the slide. We in Rosatom have been always focused definitely on large-scale nuclear power plants. However, we have also experience in small reactors development, and we constantly look for innovations, and I will talk about that later. Next slide, please. And definitely, there is no doubt for any of us that there is now time for SMRs. The global energy landscape has changed, and like renewable energy sources are on the rise, smart grids are developing, energy systems are more and more decentralized, and there is a trend for decarbonization. So there is a market for SMRs. And we tried to follow these market trends and to look at what experience and technologies we have in our portfolio. And we understand that basically our reactor designer that you see in the slide, a subsidiary of Rosatom, the designer OKBM Afrikantov, has time-tested and proven technologies of SMRs already. Ever since 1954, Rosatom has designed and successfully manufactured and operated over 20 small reactors. So for us, it's not something new. It's already a tested and tried technology. And we have accumulated the vast experience of operation of small reactors for icebreaker fleet over 400 reactor years. Thus, we understand that our experience can meet the market requirements, and basing on these two important notions, we are going forward with the SMRs. Next slide, please. Here, basing on our experience, as I mentioned earlier, you can see the evolution of the PWR small modular reactors of Rosatom in the slide. And we are proud to say that in May 2020, like a month ago, we fully commissioned the first and unique floating nuclear power plant with SMRs. There are two SMRs providing together 77 megawatt electric for the northern part of Russia. It is also important to say that these reactors are similar to those used on icebreakers. So there are predecessors for the reactors used in this floating nuclear power plant. This floating nuclear power plant with SMRs will enable reliable, safe, and affordable energy supply to the key industries of the northern part of Russia, as I mentioned, in its location site in Chukotka. Next slide, please. And following that experience, we are now introducing the flagship SMR, Rosatom SMR, a written series SMR that actually incorporates all the features, all the best, I would say, features of its predecessors, including the KLT-40 reactors installed at the unique floating nuclear power plant. So we can say that this written series SMR is based on the proven technology, pressurized water reactor, that has proven its efficiency and ultimate safety throughout the stages of the life cycle. It has integral configuration with steam generators incorporated into the reactor vessel. Its compact design has made it possible to reduce the dimensions by 45% compared to KLT-40S, and to reduce the mass by 35%. Actually, the total weight of the assembled written series SMR is 244.5 tons. The heaviest component is the reactor vessel with the weight of 146 tons. It is transported separately, the reactor vessel, in a specially manufactured carriage for railway transportation. However, road transportation is also possible with the use of heavy-duty transport vehicles. Other equipment has modular design and it is fit for transportation by usual means of transport. You can see here in this slide the real pictures of written series SMR transportation. This is not computer simulation. These are the real pictures taken from that process. Next slide, please. Here I would like to focus on the versatility of the written series SMR design. They can be considered for number of applications. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the written series SMR for icebreakers, then written series SMRs for land-based small nuclear power plants and for floating nuclear power plants. The key parameters are here in this slide. I don't want to spend time on just reading them. The presentations will be shared. But basically, the electric capacity of a written series SMR is around 50 megawatt electric. The important thing here is that in that 6 of written series SMRs were already manufactured, installed on the icebreakers, and 2 of them reached criticality in November 2019, November last year. This means that the reactor technology itself is already referenced, proven, and actually we can say that we have a sufficient market for written series SMRs in the country to be able to offer the international market the tested and tried, referenced, proven reactor solution. Now let's move to the next slide and talk and have a deeper dive into the land-based nuclear power plant with written series SMRs. Its installed electrical capacity is 106 megawatts. There are 2 written series reactors in it. Design lifetime is 60 years, refueling cycle up to 7 years. The capacity factor will exceed 90% during the whole 60-year design lifetime. Speaking about the construction time, we expect it to be 4 years for the first of a kind in Russia, and we hope that we will be able to decrease it to 3 years for Nth-of-a-kind. It can be used for multiple applications. We mentioned here in the slide water desalination, cogeneration opportunities, and hydrogen production. Due to the relatively small installed capacity and maneuverability, it is quite easily compatible with electrical grids. Next slide, please. As we are getting ready for the first of a kind project in Russia, there is a conceptual design of it. You can see the layout of the nuclear power plant with the dimensions. It occupies the area of 0.06 square kilometers. The composition, the layout is pretty much similar to a classical large-scale nuclear power plant with the reactor building, turbine building, and the red waste buildings, as well as the additional buildings and the cooling towers. You can see it on the slide. Modularity is available for this project. Important to say that when you double the capacity, you don't double the size of the site because there is still some shared infrastructure which stays the same, stays shared for the added units when you scale up. Next slide, please. Actually, it is important to, yeah,
I see I have like 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Having a deeper dive into the reactor itself, as I mentioned, it's integral configuration with passive and active systems, safety systems. We have the 4 main circulation pumps here. The core has 199 fuel assemblies. And still, since it's the integral design, the steam generators are incorporated into the reactor pressure vessel. Okay, I don't think I need to stop here deeper. Next slide then, please. Here, a little bit about the safety concept. The reactor has inherent safety features, passive and active safety systems, as I mentioned, definitely physical barriers, and beyond design basis accident management. So the defense in depth principle is fully considered here. The integral design configuration almost eliminates the classic large loss of coolant accident. Next slide, I think. The protection against external hazards is depicted here. You can see that it incorporates all the features of a classical Generation 3 Plus project.
Egg whites.
Sorry. Yeah, and it's resilient to various natural events. Special notice is taken to the protection against earthquakes. It's basically 0.3 G, but can be extended to withstand stricter requirements to 0.5 G. The design also takes into consideration the maximum potential external impacts, including large commercial aircraft crash. Winds and tornadoes are also taken into account. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about the first-of-a-kind project in Russia. Licensing, definitely. As I mentioned, 6 written reactors have been manufactured, and we don't have a special process for reactor licensing in Russia because we have a different licensing system. So our next step for the first-of-a-kind SMR and PP in Russia is getting the site license, and we plan to get that in 2023 and to commission the nuclear power plant in 2027, and it's shown on the next slide, please. Yeah, right here. So site license is planned to be obtained in 2023, the construction license 2024, and 2027 commissioning year. Next slide, please. Just two ideas about the sustainability. We do take active role in working groups globally to assess how SMR projects will affect the sustainable development of countries, and we have developed a methodology for calculating these positive effects. So we'll be happy to join hands with the global vendors to assess the effects of these projects' implementation in host countries. Thank you. I'll be ready to answer the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. This was a very interesting presentation. And now we move to Rolls-Royce. We have with us today Dr. Martin Godfellow. Dr. Godfellow is responsible for setting the direction and leading the management of global campaigns for SMR deployment. With more than 15 years of experience in strategic planning, has a deep analytical knowledge of the nuclear and energy industry. Martin has a doctorate in nuclear engineering from the University of Manchester. He's both a chartered engineer and chartered physicist. He has published and presented to the government, industry, and the public on topics including nuclear renaissance, small modular reactors, and nuclear technology development. Please, Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Raj. And good afternoon, good evening, and indeed good morning to those of you watching today. Thank you for being with us. I'm here today representing not just Rolls-Royce, but the entirety of our small modular reactor consortium, some of the names of which you can see on the screen there. We are currently engaged in the first phase of the design program for our SMR, which is funded by our consortium, but also with some funding from the British government. I think, we have to start with why are we doing this? It's already been touched on today. I'll not dwell, but we are at a bit of a tipping point in the global energy landscape where decarbonisation has really become one of the key aspects of economic activity and economic strategic planning that countries around the world are now looking at. And we're transitioning from a historic state, which has largely been in place for at least 100 years, if not longer, where we've been heavily dependent on fossil fuels, to a future state where new technologies and new ways of doing things, including heating homes, moving around, and generating electricity, will need to be done on a net zero decarbonized basis. And as some of the speakers have already said, and I fully agree with them, nuclear has the potential to have a huge contribution in that decarbonized world. But one of the key aspects that we have to address in nuclear is cost and delivery. We have to be able to deliver on budget, on time, every time. So if we go to the next slide, please. So when we started our project about 3 years ago now, we really went back to first principles, and we started from a product requirements set whereby we looked at the fundamentals of what really drives down the cost of electricity that a power station will produce. And not just the electricity of course, but the energy, you know, the heat, the electricity, and whatever other ancillary services you might be able to offer. And it's a function of a number of fairly simple characteristics, but are actually very complicated when you get under the surface. And everything that we've done since then has really been targeted at addressing these challenges, reducing the cost of the power station, managing the investment required, managing the financing required, reducing the through life operational costs, and we'll see in a moment how big an aspect that is. Maximizing the power output, again, I think one of the previous speakers said, you know, the more power you can get out of this fixed asset, the better its economic efficiency through its life. Maximizing its reliability and reducing the fuel cost, not just the fuel cost of the fuel in the plant itself, but the total cost of the fuel ecosystem through its life cycle. So the fabrication facilities, the waste handling and management facilities that are also required to operate the power station. And I use the word power station because it's really important. We've heard lots of descriptions of reactors today, but fundamentally to the customer, this is a power station. It's far more than just a reactor. And we have to take that holistic approach when we're looking at the design of the product to make sure that we're really addressing all of the areas that speak to these characteristics. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We take a very economical view of how we develop our plant. And on the left-hand side there, you can see essentially a buildup of the cost of the power, of the life cycle cost of the electricity from the plants. And again, a lot of talk today around capital cost and overnight capital cost. Well, that's that small little blue bar on the left-hand side. And whilst it's very important, it's actually a very small fraction of the life cycle cost of electricity. The operational costs can be quite significant. And the financing cost, and three different rates of financing shown here in the green bars in the middle. The financing cost is a huge determinant of the cost of electricity and the effectiveness, the economic effectiveness of the investment in the power station through its lifetime. And as you can see, certainly with some figures on the right-hand side there for the UK, the price of electricity in the markets that these technologies will be deployed into is by no means a certainty or a fixed value. You know, you have to be able to compete and cope with a wide range of scenarios. And actually being down at that sort of £40 a megawatt hour region, certainly for a UK-based plant with a UK-based development cycle, is where you really need to be. And essentially our projections, our estimates so far place us in the 40 to 60 region, which means that we are competitive in that UK landscape. Similar disclaimer to some of the other speakers so far, that's UK figures with a UK-based engineering approach, a UK operation, UK licensing, UK regulation. As you move around the world, those figures change, and indeed, actually, there may be regions where we're able to do better than that. But it's really that fundamental, holistic understanding of each of those aspects and how the design of the power station affects each of those aspects. That's something that we integrate, perhaps in a way that I've not seen from others so far. So if we can go to the next slide, please. What that takes us to is a small physical sized power station. So the power station itself, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, slightly larger than a soccer pitch. And actually some of the engineering work we've done recently brings the size down potentially even further than that, although we're still finalizing some of those details. But a relatively high power output at 440 megawatts. And again, it's about maximizing the power output from the asset for that capital cost. So our capital cost around £1.75 billion, the Nth-of-a-kind unit. And again, that delivers then down to about £40 a megawatt hour with the appropriate financing. We look at the whole life cycle. So we use a tried and tested fuel form, which integrates with current fuel fabrication facilities. We have a relatively standard 3-loop PWR design in a modular configuration with a modular power plant. And when we use the word modular, you can see it there in the second picture on the right. We're talking about how to systematically modularize the entire construction of the power station so that we can manufacture it offsite in factory facilities, in controlled conditions, in repeatable processes with the same staff, conducting those exercises over and over again, learning by doing, becoming more efficient, reducing cost further. And the standardized approach that we take with an aseismic bearing and a seismic raft allows us to place those standardized products, those standardized modules on top of that raft wherever we are in the world. So we gain the flexibility of effectively any site anywhere within the bounds of the design basis around things like seismicity. But we gain the advantages of the offsite manufacturing and that controlled environment. And of course, we have to do some of the assembly on site. And the final picture you can see there on the right-hand side is a cutaway of the design during construction. And our construction takes place entirely undercover. So we erect a temporary site canopy around the site. Because of our small, compact nature, we can do that. And what that means is that we can work no matter what the weather conditions. We're not encumbered by wind or rain or snow or sandstorms. And we can build rapidly and in a controlled, repeatable fashion every time. Next slide, please. And so finally, I suppose, I just revisit that point. This is a design of a power station that's driven by economics and market requirements. It is a power station. It's not just about the reactor. In fact, much of our innovation goes in across the whole breadth of the power station systems, from civil engineering through to the turbine island, through to the cooling water island and beyond. We are doing an awful lot of innovation. So we take a relatively standard PWR design, but we innovate where it makes a discernible difference to the economics of the plant, and where we can cement things like safety to ensure that it's as safe as it reasonably can be, and certainly improving upon safety levels for similar technologies that we've seen so far. But really focusing that innovation where it brings benefit to the customer. And ultimately, only by achieving these cost targets can we actually deploy a product in a meaningful way, because, and I think this would go for any of the vendors speaking today, deploying one reactor is not the ball game here. These are small modular reactors. If we want to make a meaningful difference to climate change, we have to be able to deploy them on a significant scale, multiple units repeated around the world. And actually addressing all sorts of different markets, such as electricity, but also, one of the projects we're actively working on at the moment is actually coupled to hydrogen and synthetic fuel generation. So really moving into other domains beyond that which nuclear has perhaps typically seen previously in that commercial space. I'm very conscious that you've heard a lot from a lot of people today, and it'd be good to get into the Q&A. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Martin. Well, we will move now to SMART. We have with us Dr. Han Kang. Dr. Kang is currently working with Kerry Atomic Energy Institute as Director of SMART Project Development. He started his role as Director for the SMART Pre-Project Engineering, which was the first phase cooperation program between Korea and Saudi Arabia. He and his team coordinated overall technology development and validation program of organization from Korea and Saudi Arabia to successful achievement of originally planned goal. Dr. Kang obtained his PhD in 1996 from the Seoul National University in Nuclear Engineering. The title of this presentation would be Smart Development with Validated Technology. Dr. Kang, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Professor Araji. Yeah, thank you. SMART is integral reactor, is electric power 100 megawatt, 110 megawatt, which is about 1/10 of large nuclear power plant. SMART application is not only for electricity generation, but also CO2 desalination, district heating, and process heat supply. If we consider cogeneration desalination, SMART can supply 100 megawatt electricity and 40,000 tons of fresh water concurrently. Next, please. Since 1997, Kerry and Korean nuclear industry had been developing small modular reactor, the SMART technology together. In the early development stage, we had focused on reactor and safety system, just entry press design, development. Afterward, whole plant design was done for standard design approval from 2009 to 2012. Korea and Saudi Arabia launched a 3-year first kind of engineering design project for construction of two smart units in Saudi Arabia. Next, please. In 2015, Korea and Saudi Arabia signed Memorandum of Understanding for a Smart Partnership Cooperation. To reach agreement, two countries performed the joint feasibility study for smart deployment and identified the mutually beneficial cooperation. This form of cooperation is not typical seller and vendor cooperation. Two countries are partners. We jointly developed technology and shared the ownership of smart technology. And now we are trying to promote the smart technology globally together. Next, please. Smart Pre-Project Engineering Project is the first phase of the smart partnership between two countries. The purpose of this project is to design the smart to build two units and specific onshore site of Saudi Arabia. Work scope includes reactor system, fuel, balance of plant, and main component design validation. And finally, we generated preliminary safety analysis report for licensing procedure. This project also includes human capacity builder program for the Saudi Arabia engineer that include site basic, site technical, and on-the-job training, on-the-job participation. Also, major nuclear industry, including KECO ENC, KECO NF, and Doosan Heavy Industry participate in this smart project for their expertise. Next, please. Smart is just right out of reactor, where the major component of the reactor system, like core, steam generator, and pressurized and pump are located inside the reactor vessel. There is no penetration through the reactor vessel. Only small penetration are less than 2 inches are allowed and above the top of steam generator. By doing this, we can limit the brake flow through the reactor vessel. Reactor coolant pump are candle motor pump and horizontally mounted above the steam generator. We are using a helical steam generator and produce three-potted steam. On special device, some inlet orifices are used to prevent unstable oscillation of some steam generator. We are using a 57 conventional fuel assembly with UO2 ceramic fuel. Next, please. All the safety system of smart operate in such a way the operator action or electrical power not necessary for smart safety function during design-based accident. Typical safety system of smart including some injection system, heat removal system, and containment cooling system. All these systems operate on basis of natural force like gravity and pressure difference and water for radioactivity suppression, scraping. Therefore, safety system can operate not depending on electric power from emergency diesel generator. But we are using some safety grade battery to provide necessary DC power for valve initiation and post-accident monitoring. Next, please. This figure shows the site plot of some 2 units of SMART. SMART is now designed to locate in a coastal area, so this figure shows some seawater intake structure and other buildings, including chlorinization building in the yard. Some big characteristics of smart design is that we are combined the reactor building and auxiliary building into one building. By doing this, we adopted some small and modular plant concept to combine some equipment and system. These are some big our smart design characteristics. And compound building consists of access control and radio waste treatment area. And one compound building is doing for the 2 units. Next, please. Throughout the development of SMART, comprehensive design validation and verification program has been performed. Series of tests and experiments has been carried out to examine the physical phenomena related to the specific smart design concept. 2 kinds of integral test loop are developed. One is smart ITL and other one is HTR. especially smart ITL very biggest integral test loop. These test loops are used to validate our local safety analysis report. We call TAS SMR code. Next, please. We did a lot of tests, but I showed here that the typical, some representative test facility for smart ITL, smart MCR, smart pure. Smart ITL is integrated thermal hydro test facility for smart, and this facility simulates the react current system, passive system, and balance of plant. The height is a very important scale to preserve natural phenomena of passive safety system. So we preserve the original height of smart passive system in this facility. Smart main control room was also constructed to generate some licensing data for human factor engineering and emergency operating guide. Smart MCR utilizing large display and sophisticated alarm reduction technology. Also, we are using elastic tie-based alarm display, which provides faster and easier plant status awareness. Also, even we are adopting a conventional U2 ceramic pure, considering the different operating condition and assembly height, several tests are completed, including critical heat flux test, hydraulic test, and mechanical integrity test. Next, please. During our smart pre-project engineering project, there are some design change, including power omulating and fully passive system introduction for better economics and safety. So considering this design change, CARI, CACI, and KHMP adopted new standard design approval for smart, we call Smart 100 last December. Smart SDA will enter the regular technical review phase after the compliance review page completed. We expect final safety evaluation report will be issued end of next year. Next, please. Now I'm talking about smart business model. CARI and CACI are joint smart technology owner now. Also recently, KHMP is a lot of experience in large nuclear power plant in Korea and UAE. KHMP began to play a role as EPC for global smart commercialization. Smart team consists of CARI, CACI, and KHMP is the best combination of smart development and deployment and global commercialization. Next, please. So I'd like to summarize my presentation. Smart can be utilized for various applications, including electricity generation, CO2 desalination, and process heat supply, including some hydration generation and mining of procedure. Smart design is a mixture of innovative concept and proven technology for licensing and market accessibility. New technology were proven through comprehensive technology validation program. Korea and Saudi Arabia jointly have ownership of smart technology and cooperate for global commercialization. Two countries are ready to cooperate with newcomer countries to deploy smart technology. Thank you so much for your attention. And please stay healthy and strong with your family and loved one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Han. Fine, now we move to the last panelist. Is the most patient, Dr. Upen Mulder. Dr. Mulder is the Chief Nuclear Officer of X-Energy and leads the development of X-Energy bubble bed high temperature gas cooled reactor technology. In his executive leadership, he serves as the overlead for the project. Before joining X-Energy, he had a very big career in South Africa. He was the CEO and the director of Steam Krampstral Thorium Limited of South Africa. And prior to that, he was the chief scientific officer for the Bubble Bed Modular Reactor Program, the famous program. He served also as the director of the Postgraduate School for Nuclear Science and Engineering at Northwest University in South Africa. Dr. Upen holds the undergraduate and master degree in mathematics and his BS in Applied Mathematics and a Doctor of Engineering on Nuclear Engineering. His presentation will be on technology overview of X-Energy of XA100 Generation 4 reactor. Dr. Mulder.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Raj, and for the opportunity to speak here. You can go to the next slide, please. Well, I will break up my talk in two. Effectively, it will be an overview of my company, X-Energy, and the next part will be about the technology a little bit. Next slide, please. So we have two products in our company. The first one being the reactors, which is that we will design and license, then integrate and assemble, bring it to site, and then operate and maintain. The second product is our fuel. And obviously there are several steps. The first one being uranium mining and enrichment. That is not our business, but we start from fuel fabrication, fuel delivery, and then through to the reactor. Next slide, please. So our solutions actually, as in terms of reactors, is about the proven design. First of all, there's 50+ years of research and test reactors that's been built. These reactors are designed for base load and also load following, and we can follow load within the power range 100 to 400 and back again in 5% per minute. We look at grid scale down to mobile form factors. We also look at simplicity in design. Simplicity is what makes it cost effective at the end of the day and makes construction and regulation more predictable. I think that's critical. It's also nearest to Gen 4 market. We see that no research or material hurdles remaining. Our commercial reactor products are in the design phases at the moment, and we have accelerated the approval tracks within the US and Canada ongoing at the moment. The safety of our systems are unprecedented in that it's a so-called true walkaway safe, where safety is purely guaranteed by physics and not by mechanical means or operator intervention. We have very safe fuel, as you know. It's been mentioned that it cannot melt. It certainly cannot melt. Physically, it's impossible for graphite to melt. And no safety requirement for active cooling is ever necessary. We also achieve on the 400 meter, actually way before that, can be our safety perimeter. We will adhere to all regulatory requirements in that respect. The design is modular, and our components are manufactured in a way that it's leading to scalability and timeline and cost control. And it's never been done before in the nuclear business. We've been working at that for a long time now. 2.5 years construction for a single unit, and we anticipate that the 4 years, it will be 4 years for a full pack, Nth-of-a-kind. Next slide, please. So our reactors is grid scale with load following capabilities in increments of 75 megawatts. Our expected sweet spot would be in the order of 4 reactors per plant. And we believe that because of modularity, manufacturable design minimizes on-site construction, that we can control our timelines and cost. We're, as I mentioned before, on the approval track for both US and Canada. Next slide. In terms of our fuel, the DOE has been quoted as calling this the most robust nuclear fuel on Earth. It's encapsulated fuel, as you know, these TRISO fuel, self-contained meltdown-proof fuel, and offers the UCO form of fuel that we are looking at. Because of that one oxygen molecule in UO2 being replaced by carbon, and you don't have the interaction within the TRISO particles, the fission product really with that, you have a much lower pressure buildup, and therefore our burn-ups go as high as 165,000 megawatt days per ton. And our product is TRISO X, high quality, and we have improved our production efficiency, and in that way believe that we will be able to reduce our cost dramatically. Next page, please. So the XE100 leverages proven technology with novel integration. In fact, we have been I would say leading edge for the past 70 years. Farrington Daniels, in fact, in 1944 made his first proposal of the pebble bed reactor. At that time, mind you, coupled to a direct cycle, by the way. Then there was a reactor built, the Dragon reactor built. 16 countries participated in Winford in the UK. There were 2 experimental reactors built, one for prismatic block in the US, Peach Bottom, and a pebble bed in Germany. And then at the same time, just shortly after that, 2 demonstration plants, one at Fort St. Vrain in Colorado, and in Germany, the thorium high temperature reactor. As of late in 1998, Japan also built a prismatic block reactor. And as we know, China has built the HTR-10. And in the US, there was a huge effort ongoing through the NGNP program. And we are leveraging that today in X-Energy. That's where our current position is, leveraging more than $700 million of US DOE investment so far. Next slide, please. So I will now talk about the technology. And if you go to the next slide, I wanted to say that X-Energy didn't start from scratch. We indeed are building on the shoulders of giants, and we had the AVR in Germany. First of all, I worked there for quite some time. THTR in Germany was built as demonstrator. HTR-10, I've had a very close collaboration ongoing. It was used through the IAEA, and we had built a very good relationship with the Chinese at the time. And in South Africa, as was mentioned, we have designed the PBMR, and after $1.2 billion was spent, unfortunately, that program was terminated. So we consider the HTGR to be a very mature design, in fact, the most mature Gen 4, we believe, and that the XE100 design is really cutting edge in this evolution, and we believe that we can deploy this within the next 5 to 6 years. Next slide, please. So our design philosophy is actually very simple. We believe that any system that performs or contributes to support a safe function would be classified as a safety system or either important to safety. X-Energy has ensured that all these safety functions can be performed using passive means. No power or operator intervention is required to ensure that fuel isn't damaged. So, in fact, our preliminary classification of safety systems comes down to just 5 systems. First of all, it's the TRISO-based fuel, which in itself has got 6 independent, let's say, radionuclide barriers, the RPV, the reactor building supporting the reactor, shutdown rods, and reactor protection system. Then we have systems classified as non-safety related, but with special treatment. These are systems such as the burn-up measurement system, control rods during normal operation, the helium purification system, and fuel handling system. To the right, just a depiction of the just 4 control measures that we look at in the design. Control of criticality, control of heat removal, control of the containment of radionuclides, and maintaining the core geometry. Next slide, please. So, as mentioned, the reactor is a well-proven system, derived over 50 years of work, design work, proven technology in terms of the US fuel. A lot of money have been invested there. We have been very blessed in the US that X-Energy itself has won quite a number of awards, I think the most of all the advanced reactors. And our design is pretty conservative and doesn't require new materials development in our code cases. The steam pressure and temperature design will provide steam from multiple off-the-shelf systems, and we try to keep that as simple as possible from that perspective. Next slide, please. You will just here see a depiction of the nuclear island and conventional island, where the nuclear island on the left will be the system that we would like to have licensed. Next slide, please. Then our standard off-the-shelf offering is a 4-reactor plant. As you can see, each reactor is tied to one turbine. That gives us the redundancy that we would like to have in this case. And in fact, that total area there is roughly 320 meters by 340 meters by 380 meters. And that will be also the safety perimeter. Next slide. The design of the reactor is such that the primary shutdown mechanism will be a strong negative temperature coefficient over the entire operational range. That has been proven on several reactors, including the HTR-10 and the ABR in Germany. The secondary diverse shutdown system comprised of 9 control rods and are inserted into channels in the side reflector for shutting down the reactor. Control rods also provide a third independent means to shut down the reactor. And as defense in depth, because of continuous fueling of this reactor, you have a very low excess reactivity, meaning that just by defueling, let's say about 1 cubic meter of pebbles, that's about 5,400 pebbles, one would render the reactor subcritical long term. Next slide, please.
I'll try to wrap up, Dr. Open.
I will do. So I'll go on to the next slide, skip the helical steam generator. Just wanted to mention that our fuel handling and storage system is an important part of this system. The fuel will be, as it passes through the reactor, will be measured for burnup at the bottom of the reactor. And there's enough storage space within the reactor for storing the spent fuel over its entire lifetime. Next slide, please. Just to show the control systems, 4 systems: distributed control system, investment protection, reactor protection, and post-event monitoring system. Next slide, please. We are well advanced in terms of our training simulator for humans factors engineering. We currently have completed phases 1 and 2, and we start with phase 3 and planned for completion within December 2022. The FlowNex code is a first principles basic physics code used and connect directly to the engineering simulator. Next slide, please. We'll be using conventional island power conversion COTS systems as far as possible. And skid-mounted turbines allow for fast swap-out replenishment instead of in-situ refurbishment. And the condenser cooling can be done either wet or for dry cooling. Next slide, please. In summary, I just wanted to say that the XE100 is an HTR based on proven technology. Safety characteristics and size of this reactor enable deployment in densely populated and remote Jordanian areas. Inherent nuclide retention capability of the UCO fuel is at the center of the XE100's intrinsic safety design. And in our company, we've got key personnel that have been part of the US and international HTR community for more than 30 years, working together with the XE100 in the past 10 years. And I think this ensures our ability to meet all milestones. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mulder. I'm sorry we are really running out of time, but we will take extra time for questions. And I want to assure all the questions will be answered after the webinar. We will actually answer the question. I noticed that a lot of these questions has been answered by the panelists, some of them as we are. But I think I would like to maybe truly that this will require more time, actually. And I will still want to remind you that in 2021, we'll have an SMR workshop in Jordan. You can come to the Dead Sea and really experience the how salt is the Dead Sea. So good for some of the Maltex and the molten salt. So I think we will have more time for that. But let's, in the remaining time, I think we will have some questions that I summarized, I suppose, more of a generic question. A lot of detailed questions has been asked, but I think they're not appropriate for this panelist. But let me start, actually. I mean, these were very interesting presentations. Definitely the SMR will have a future. But do you think, what kind of collaboration at this stage do you think between the you as technology providers to expedite the maturity and the commercialization of SMR worldwide? So this is really for the panel as a whole. Do you find a room for collaboration to actually ensure the success and the survival of the SMR as a technology. Anybody would like to answer to start with?
Well, if I then could start, since I'm still warm. Yes, I do believe that there is immense potential for collaboration in this business. I think we have tried, at least in the US, we've tried to, in terms of licensing, of course, try to make this, license this reactor through the US NRC. We have a parallel track ongoing within Canada at the moment. And I do believe that, of course, every country has got their own regulatory guidelines and so on. But this should provide for a very sound basis. And I think one should seek for a much better collaboration on especially the licensing front, I think, throughout the community, I hope.
Yeah, and just to build on that point, I agree 100%. And we applaud the memorandum of cooperation between the CNSC in Canada and the US NRC. I think that's a great first step, but there's probably a lot more that could be done with additional regulatory bodies around the world.
Do you think the really cooperation is mainly on the regulatory body, mainly, not between the vendors themselves?
Oh, I think there is there's obviously there's a lot of potential in terms of supply chain. I think every country should that wish to deploy these types of systems. There's such a great opportunity, and obviously, if we look at supply chain, we do look at it internationally in the US, from the US side. And I've been amazed coming from South Africa how absolutely open-minded the US is in this sense. And it's all about price competitiveness and quality of this. But I do think there's an absolute amazing opportunity.
I think also I can add some points. In some point, each vendor is competing to go to the market in SMR. Also, I think in other point we have a lot of the common point can cooperate together in viewpoint of the supply chain. Also some licensing is a very challenging issue for the new SMR technology. So I think you can especially in period of licensing, new technology is very important in viewpoint of license. So we can if we cooperate in the licensing, it is each vendor together the regulatory body, it can make more make faster of the SMR deployment in worldwide. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Elena? Unmute yourself, but.
Yeah, just to add on what the colleagues have said, I think that answering your question about cooperation and collaboration, as you put it, we can also speak about collaboration with the like two types, with the host country. When during the project implementation, a vendor can work together with the local industry. Definitely, depending on the level of the industry development and the certificates that the local industry has. But to the maximum of the potential, I think every project has to work with the local industry, especially, and that's true for SMR and TP projects as well. And the other thing, just actually a couple of days ago, or maybe even yesterday, I'm just checking my social network to see that the Rosatom Global has announced that Rosatom will work with GE Power and Framatome to participate in the tender for construction of the Belene nuclear power plant in Bulgaria. That's a great example of collaboration. So that's the news from Thursday, actually. So yes, collaboration is there, and I'm just confirming everything that was said before and giving these two ideas to add on. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I'll go to the questions from the audience now. I think the first question, which I'm only selecting more generic question. What are the prospects of using these SMR technologies as a carbon-free option in heavy industry, applications such as steel, glass, ceramic, where these require very high temperature? Who would like to take the response to that? I think
well, being a high temperature reactor, I guess I could speak to that a little bit. We certainly, we have in our current design with a steam generator on the secondary side, have opted for an outlet temperature of 750 degrees C. But our design is such that we can very easily move to 900 degrees C. The ABR, for instance, operated for 16 years of its life at 950 degrees C. So there's certainly the opportunity of going to very high temperatures. Typically hydrogen production, let's say the hybrid and SI processes would need in the order of 870 degrees continuous steam temperature. And one can obviously do that. And the hydrogen economy is always the one thing out there, but I do see this as a great opportunity.
Yeah. I think it's an opportunity for the whole sector, both Generation 3 and Generation 4. On the Generation 3 side, hydrogen production is probably, and Generation 4 side, hydrogen production is the opportunity to provide a high temperature, super high temperature heat source, which will not be available to any Generation 4 reactors, in my opinion, anytime soon. This is well above 1200 degrees C for ceramics, glass, cement manufacturing, and certain types of metal refining. That is the realm of combustion and potentially the role of hydrogen combustion. And in that realm, all SMRs can compete and can make the case that they can produce cost competitive hydrogen industrial scale. The piece in the middle, which is the piece that Generation 4 systems can provide directly, and that is high temperature heat from a Generation 4 system, depending on what class, but somewhere between 500, maybe 450 for the metal cooled reactors, 450 up to 900 for the super high temperature, high temperature gas reactors. It's in that block that Generation 4 systems can supply heat directly. But above that, the field's open for all SMRs providing hydrogen, and with hydrogen combustion, you have an alternative source to heating oil and natural gas for many other industrial processes.
If I may speak on behalf of the light water technologies, because it's often believed that the SMRs can produce high temperature heat. We actually studied the production of hydrogen in a high temperature steam electrolyzer process, and we found that because we produce superheated steam, with only 2% electrical output being used from the facility to essentially run an electric heater, we can raise that temperature, the steam, very efficiently to 850 degrees C. And in our study, a 6-module plant produced 190 metric tons of hydrogen and 1,500 metric tons of oxygen very economically. Again, with only a 2% electrical output used for that heater to produce that high temperature steam. So it's possible for the light water designs as well to provide that high temperature steam output.
And I agree with that point as well, actually, with swapping heat, yes.
And I would say, being a design engineer all my life, we have indeed looked at such processes where you really replace your, let's say, the steam generator with an heat exchanger, and actually with an air combustion system, just combined to that. And one can very easily go to very high temperatures. We have looked at temperatures for getting rid of poisonous gases in the oil business. And we could very easily go to 1400 degrees C in a secondary step with very high efficiencies.
Okay. The second question, I think the question is here for the non-light water reactor. How will the agencies steeped in light water expertise, especially the regulatory body, move up the learning curve to address safety issues for high temperature gas-cooled reactor, molten salt, and other advanced design? you think there's an impediment for licensing these novel designs? I mean, non-light water reactor design.
There's been there's been amazing developments in the US in the NRC environment. There was through the DOE an initiative whereby they have changed, gone through a whole effort to change the general design criteria, and that has been approved now for non-light water advanced reactors. And especially for, in the case of the high temperature gas core reactors, an amazing amount of work that has been done, that has been accepted so far. And I believe that process is well underway. There's also the licensing modernization program ongoing. Our XE100 was used in a tabletop experiment, and we've seen incredible value and you know, for affording these you know, just looking at the development and I think opportunities really started also by NuScale. I mean, NuScale is doing a fantastic job there in helping from that perspective, and looking at the way that reactors can be operated now with multiple let's say these multiple units, which is obviously new. And so they have really been road clearing for us, and we can build on that at the moment.
All right. I mean, considering the time, actually, I think we will answer all these questions. And I think we thank you for all your participation and the panelists. And we look forward to seeing you in Jordan in 2021. Hopefully a safe, healthy future for all of us. Thank you for participating.
Thanks very much.